Commander Tejo stood on the bridge of the Cosmic Harmony, watching the stars through the great crystal dome above his head. The ship hummed softly around him, its living walls pulsing with gentle blue light. After 3 months of travel, they were finally approaching the edge of human space. "Still no response from the humans?" he asked. Communications Officer Yunji shook her head. Her silver hair caught the bridge lights as she turned from her console. "Nothing, sir. They know we're here, but they haven't said a word." Tejo frowned. The Galactic Council had been watching humanity for decades. These creatures had appeared in space suddenly, building crude metal ships and spreading across nearby star systems like wildfire. Most species took thousands of years to develop faster than light travel. Humans had done it in less than 300. "Perhaps they're afraid," suggested Science Officer Bitna. She was studying readings on her elegant display screen. "Their technology is very basic compared to ours. They might think we're here to attack them." Tactical analyst Jun Woo looked up from his station. "I don't think humans get afraid easily. Our observers say they fight each other constantly. Even their entertainment shows violence." Tejo had read the reports. Humans were strange creatures. They came from a dangerous world with extreme weather, deadly animals, and natural disasters. Most intelligent species evolved on peaceful worlds with stable climates. Earth was different. It had created different beings. The Council had debated for years about making contact. Some members wanted to wait longer, to let humanity develop. More advanced technology first. Others worried that waiting might be dangerous. Humans were expanding fast, and they might become a threat if left alone. "Sir," Yunji called out, "I'm getting a signal." The bridge fell silent. Tejo straightened his uniform and walked to the center of the command platform. This would be the first time any council member had spoken directly to a human. "Put it through," he ordered. The main screen flickered, and suddenly they were looking at a human face. Tejo tried not to show his surprise. He had seen pictures, but seeing a living human was different. The creature had dark hair, brown eyes, and skin that looked surprisingly smooth. It wore a simple blue uniform with strange symbols on the shoulders. "This is Captain Hyun-Soo of the United Human Navy ship Dauntless," the human said. His voice was calm and steady. "I'm responding to your request for contact." Tejo blinked. The human spoke perfect galactic standard, the common language used by all council species. How had they learned it so quickly? "Greetings, Captain," Tejo replied carefully. "I am Commander Tejo of the Velthrian Fleet, representing the Galactic Council. We come in peace, seeking dialogue with your species." The human smiled, showing white teeth. "We appreciate that, Commander. We've been hoping to meet our neighbors for a long time." Something about the human's confidence surprised Tejo. Most species were nervous during first contact, especially when meeting older, more advanced civilizations. Captain Hyun-Soo seemed completely relaxed. "We would like to arrange a formal meeting," Tejo continued. "Perhaps we could meet at a neutral location to discuss relations between our peoples." "That sounds good to us," Hyun-Soo agreed. "There's an asteroid field about 6 hours from here. It's roughly between our territories. Would that work?" Tejo looked at his officers. Bitna nodded quickly. The location was acceptable from a safety standpoint. "Yes, that would be suitable," Tejo said. "We will bring our diplomatic fleet to show proper respect for this historic occasion." The human's smile grew wider. "Excellent. We'll do the same. I think you'll find our ships interesting." After the communication ended, the bridge crew began preparing for the meeting. Tejo watched them work while thinking about the human captain. Something felt unusual about the encounter, but he couldn't identify what. "Sir," Bitna said, approaching his command platform. "I've been studying their language patterns." "Captain, Hyun-Soo wasn't using a translator device." "What do you mean?" "He was speaking Galactic Standard naturally, like he'd been using it for years. But humans only learned of its existence a few months ago when we sent our first message." Jun Woo joined the conversation. "Maybe they're better at learning languages than we thought. Or maybe they've been watching us longer than we realized," Bitna said quietly. Tejo considered this. The Council's observers had been careful to stay hidden while studying humanity. If the humans had detected them, it would explain how they learned galactic standards so quickly. It might also explain Captain Hyun-Soo's confidence. "Prepare the fleet," Tae-ho ordered. "Send word to the other ships. We leave for the meeting point in 2 hours." As his crew worked, Tae-ho walked to the observation deck. Through the crystal walls, he could see the other ships in his fleet. The crystal song floated nearby like a beautiful sculpture made of living light. The Harmony's edge looked like a flower made of metal and energy. Each ship was a masterpiece of engineering and art created by species that had perfected space, travel over millions of years. He tried to imagine what human ships looked like. The few images their observers had captured showed bulky, angular vessels made of gray metal. They had no artistic beauty, no elegant curves. They looked like tools, rather than works of art. Tae-ho felt a moment of pity for humanity. They were so young, so primitive. They had barely learned to leave their home system, and already they were meeting civilizations that had mastered the stars when their species was still learning to make fire. But then he remembered Captain Hyun-soo's calm confidence, and he wondered if there was more to humanity than their crude technology suggested. "Commander," Yoonji called from the bridge. "All ships report ready to depart." "Take us to the meeting point," Tae-ho ordered, as the cosmic harmony began to move. Tae-ho felt a strange mixture of excitement and unease. He was about to make history as the first council representative to meet humanity face to face. But something about Captain Hyun-soo's smile bothered him. The human had seemed almost eager for the meeting, like he was looking forward to showing off something special. Tae-ho hoped it would just be primitive human hospitality and not something more complicated. He had no idea how wrong he was about to be. The asteroid field stretched endlessly in all directions, chunks of rock and metal floating silently through space. Some were as small as houses, others as large as cities. Commander Tae-ho watched from the bridge as his fleet took position among the drifting stones. "Beautiful formation, sir," commented Junwoo, admiring their arrangement. The 7 council ships had arranged themselves in perfect harmony. The cosmic harmony held the center position, its crystal hull catching starlight and throwing rainbows across the nearby asteroids. The crystal song and harmony's edge flanked it on either side, their elegant curves making them look like living creatures swimming through space. Behind them, the remaining 4 ships created a gentle arc. Each vessel was unique, representing different member species of the Council. The Zenthari ship looked like a giant flower made of silver and gold. The Kelmorian vessel resembled a flowing river of liquid metal. The Thylorian craft appeared to be built from crystallized music itself. "No sign of the humans yet?" reported Yoonji from her communication station. Bitna looked up from her sensors. "I'm detecting some strange readings from the far side of the field, energy signatures I don't recognize." "Probably just stellar radiation bouncing off the asteroids," Tae-ho said. He was more interested in making sure his fleet looked impressive. This first meeting would set the tone for all future relations with humanity. Each council ship was a masterpiece that had taken decades to build. The artisans who created them were masters of their craft, combining advanced technology with perfect beauty. Every line, every curve, every glowing panel had been carefully designed to inspire awe. "Sir," Junwoo said suddenly, "something's happening." Space itself seemed to twist near a cluster of large asteroids. Reality bent and stretched like fabric, being pulled. Then, with a flash of blue-white light, the human fleet appeared. Tae-ho stared at the view screen, trying to hide his disappointment. The human ships looked exactly like the intelligence reports had described. 7 gray vessels hung in space, angular and brutal in their simplicity. They had no flowing lines, no artistic touches. They looked like giant hammers floating in the void. "Well," Bitna said quietly, "they certainly have their own style. The largest human ship was clearly their flagship. It was a long rectangle with various boxes and cylinders attached to its hull. Strange symbols were painted on its sides in white letters. Tae-ho could barely make out the name, Ashen's Dauntless. "Those poor creatures," whispered Yoonji. "Their ships look so rough." Tae-ho felt a mixture of pity and embarrassment. The humans had probably brought their finest vessels, just as the Council had done. But compared to the elegant beauty of the Council fleet, the human ships looked like children's toys made from scrap metal. "At least they're trying," Junwoo said diplomatically. The human formation was loose and casual. Their ships spread out, among the asteroids without any apparent pattern. Some were above the Council fleet, others below, a few off to the sides. It looked almost random, like they had just stopped wherever they felt like it. Incoming message from the human flagship, Yunji announced. Captain Hyun-Soo's face appeared on the main screen again. He looked just as calm and confident as before, wearing the same simple blue uniform. Behind him, Tae-ho could see other humans working at what appeared to be control stations. Commander Tae-ho, the human captain said with a smile. Thank you for meeting us here. I hope the location is acceptable. It's perfect, Captain, Tae-ho replied, trying to sound enthusiastic. Your ships arrived very quickly. Your faster-than-light technology is quite efficient. We try to keep things simple and practical, Hyun-Soo said. I see you brought some beautiful vessels. The Council's reputation for artistic engineering is well-deserved. Tae-ho felt a small surge of pride. At least the humans could appreciate superior craftsmanship when they saw it. Each ship represents centuries of development, Tae-ho explained. Our artisans consider spaceship construction to be the highest form of art. Impressive, Hyun-Soo said. We have a different philosophy. We build our ships to work, not to look pretty. The comment stung a little, but Tae-ho reminded himself that humans were young and didn't understand the finer points of advanced civilization yet. Perhaps we should begin the formal introductions, Tae-ho suggested. I have representatives from several council species aboard my vessel. Sounds good, I have my senior staff here as well. My first officer, Won-bin, Science Advisor So-young, and Chief Engineer Dong-ho. As they spoke, Bitna was quietly studying her sensor readings. Something bothered her about the human ships. Their energy signatures were wrong somehow. The vessels looked primitive, but her instruments were detecting power levels that didn't match their crude appearance. Commander, she said softly, I'm getting some unusual readings from the human fleet. Tae-ho glanced at her, but continued his conversation with Captain Hyun-Soo. They were discussing meeting procedures and diplomatic protocols. Bitna frowned at her displays. The human ships were producing more energy than they should be able to generate. Their power plants were clearly more advanced than their ugly exterior suggested. But the readings made no sense. How could primitive technology produce such high energy outputs? Sir, she whispered more urgently. This time, Tae-ho heard the worry in her voice. He held up a hand to pause his conversation with the human captain. Excuse me for a moment, Captain, he said. I need to check something with my crew. Of course, Hyun-Soo replied. Take your time. Tae-ho muted the communication and turned to Bitna. What is it? The human ships, sir. They're not what they appear to be. Their power readings are much higher than they should be for vessels of that design. Jun-woo leaned over to look at her data. Maybe their instruments are miscalibrated? I've run diagnostics 3 times, Bitna said. The readings are accurate. Those ships are producing enough energy to power a small city. Tae-ho looked back at the view screen where Captain Hyun-Soo waited patiently. The human seemed completely relaxed, as if sitting in a field of asteroids surrounded by unknown alien ships was the most natural thing in the world. Keep monitoring them, Tae-ho ordered quietly, but don't do anything that might seem threatening. He reactivated the communication channel. Sorry about that, Captain. Where would you like to conduct our meeting? How about we stay right here? Hyun-Soo suggested. This is a nice neutral spot, and the asteroids provide some privacy. Tae-ho agreed, though something about the human captain's casual attitude made him uncomfortable. Most species were nervous during first contact, especially when meeting clearly superior civilizations. Captain Hyun-Soo acted like he was meeting old friends for a casual conversation. As they began discussing the formal meeting agenda, Tae-ho couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the human fleet than met the eye. The negotiations had been going well for 2 hours. Captain Hyun-Soo sat in his command chair, speaking calmly with Commander Tae-ho through the communication link. Both leaders had their senior officers present, creating a strange mix of alien and human faces on each ship's main screen. We're very interested in cultural exchanges, Hyun-Soo was saying. Our people would love to learn about your art, music, and literature. Tae-ho smiled, pleased by the humans' enthusiasm. And we would be fascinated to study your rapid technological development. How did your species achieve faster than light? Travel so quickly? We had good teachers, Hyun-Soo replied with a mysterious smile. Sometimes watching others shows you what works and what doesn't. First Officer Movin stood quietly beside his captain's chair. He was a tall man with serious eyes who rarely spoke during the negotiations. When he did talk, it was usually to ask technical questions about council technology or trade routes. Science advisor. So Young was different. She seemed genuinely excited about meeting alien species and kept asking questions about council biology, physics, and mathematics. Her enthusiasm reminded Taeho of a young student meeting famous professors. On the council side, the conversations were proceeding exactly as expected. The humans were eager, curious, and obviously impressed by council technology. They offered raw materials and basic manufactured goods in exchange for advanced equipment and scientific knowledge. "Your ships are truly works of art," Hyun-soo said, looking at the elegant vessels on his screen. "Each one is beautiful in its own way." "Thank you," Taeho replied proudly. The Crystal Song took 40 years to build. Every panel was handcrafted by master artisans. 40 years, Hyun-soo repeated thoughtfully. "That's impressive dedication. How long does it take to train one of these artisans?" "Usually about 20 years of study," Bitna answered. "Creating ships like these requires perfect understanding of both engineering and aesthetic principles." "I see," Hyun-soo said. "We have a different approach. Our ships are built for function, not beauty. We can construct a vessel like the Dauntless in about 18 months. The council officers exchanged glances. 18 months seemed impossibly fast, even for primitive ships. But then again, the human vessels were very simple compared to council masterpieces. Jun-woo had been studying the human formation during the talks. Something about their positioning bothered him. The ships looked randomly scattered, but now he was beginning to see a pattern. Each human vessel had positioned itself near key points in the asteroid field. If this were a battle, they would have excellent firing angles on any ship trying to leave. He told himself he was being paranoid. The humans seemed friendly and peaceful. They were offering trade agreements and cultural exchanges. There was no reason to suspect hostile intentions. "We should probably take a break soon," Taeho suggested. "These negotiations are important, and we want to make sure we consider everything carefully." "Good idea," Hyun-soo agreed. "My crew could use some time to review the trade proposals." As they were preparing to pause the talks, Yoon-ji suddenly looked up from her sensor station. "Commander, I'm detecting movement in the outer asteroid field." Taeho frowned. "What kind of movement?" "A large asteroid, sir. It's drifting toward our position. At current speed, it will reach the negotiation zone in about 30 minutes. Bitna checked her own instruments. "Confirmed. It's a big one. Roughly 8 kilometers across. Probably knocked loose by gravitational forces." Taeho felt a moment of concern. Moving the council fleet away from such a large obstacle would take time. Their beautiful ships were not designed for quick maneuvering. The delicate energy systems that powered their artistic beauty also made them somewhat slow to respond in emergencies. "We should begin moving our ships to a safe distance," Jun-woo suggested. Before Taeho could give the order, Captain Hyun-soo's voice came through the communication channel. "We're seeing the asteroid too, Commander. Don't worry about it. The Dauntless can handle the obstacle so we don't have to interrupt our negotiations." Taeho blinked in surprise. "Handle it? How do you mean?" "We'll just move it out of the way," Hyun-soo said casually. "No big deal. We do this kind of thing all the time." Wonbin stepped forward on the human bridge. "Captain, the asteroid is approximately 8.2 kilometers in diameter. Estimated mass is 4.7 billion tons. "Standard clearing operation, then," Hyun-soo replied calmly. "Chief Engineer Dong-ho, please prepare the main batteries." A new human voice came through the speakers. "Main batteries charging, Captain. We'll be ready to fire in 60 seconds. Taeho stared at his screen in confusion. Fire? The humans were planning to shoot at the asteroid? That seemed like a primitive solution to a simple problem. Council ships would simply use tractor beams or gravitational fields to gently nudge the rock onto a different path. "Captain," Taeho said carefully, "perhaps our ships could assist. We have advanced systems for moving large objects safely." "Thanks for the offer," Hyun-soo replied. "But we've got this covered. The Dauntless has plenty of firepower for a rock that size." Firepower. The word sent a chill down Taeho's spine. Council ships had defensive systems, of course, but they rarely Thought in terms of raw firepower, violence was usually the last resort of civilized beings. Bitna was watching her instruments carefully. The energy readings from the human flagship were climbing rapidly. Whatever they were preparing to do required massive amounts of power. "Sir," she whispered to Taeho, "the humans are charging some kind of weapon system. The energy levels are off the charts." Junwoo leaned forward in his chair. This was exactly what had been bothering him about the human formation. They had positioned themselves like warships preparing for battle, not diplomats meeting for peaceful negotiations. "Captain Hyun-soo," Taeho said slowly, "what exactly are you planning to do?" The human captain smiled, that same confident smile he had worn throughout the negotiations. "We're going to remove the asteroid so it doesn't bother anyone. Simple and efficient." On the human bridge, So Young was reading data from her instruments. "Target locked, Captain. Firing solution computed." "Very good," Hyun-soo replied. "All ships maintain safe distance from target zone." Taeho realized with growing alarm that the humans were serious about shooting at the asteroid. But what kind of weapons could possibly affect something that massive? The rock was bigger than most space stations. "Main batteries charged and ready," came Chief Engineer Dong-ho's voice. "Fire when ready," Hyun-soo ordered calmly. Taeho opened his mouth to object, to suggest a more civilized approach, to offer counsel assistance, but before he could speak, the human warship opened fire. And in that moment, everything changed. The UHN's Dauntless turned toward the approaching asteroid with smooth precision. Its gray hull rotated slowly, bringing its weapons to bear on the massive chunk of rock and metal. Commander Taeho watched from his bridge, expecting to see some crude human attempt at asteroid deflection. What he saw instead changed everything he thought he knew about humanity. The human warship fired. But these were not the elegant plasma beams or harmonic disruptors used by civilized species. What emerged from the Dauntless defied every law of physics that Taeho understood. Streaks of pure kinetic energy lanced across space, moving so fast they appeared as brief flashes of light. The projectiles struck the 8-kilometer asteroid at incredible speed. The massive rock simply vanished. One moment it was there, a mountain-sized chunk of ancient stone and metal floating through space. The next moment it was gone, replaced by an expanding cloud of superheated plasma that glowed like a miniature star. Bitna stared at her instruments in complete shock. The energy readings were impossible. Each projectile had carried the destructive force of a tactical nuclear weapon, but there had been no nuclear signatures, no exotic particles, no subspace distortions. "What?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. The asteroid hadn't just been destroyed. It had been completely atomized in less than 3 seconds. Millions of tons of solid matter reduced to glowing gas that was already beginning to cool and disperse. Junwoo felt his blood turn to ice. He was a tactical analyst with 40 years of experience. He had studied every known weapon system in the galaxy. What the humans had just demonstrated was beyond anything in Council databases. "Sir," he said, his voice shaking, "those weren't energy weapons." Taeho couldn't look away from the expanding cloud of plasma where the asteroid used to be. "What do you mean?" "Kinetic projectiles, Commander. They used kinetic projectiles moving at a significant fraction of light speed. Each round carried enough energy to level a city." The bridge fell silent except for the gentle humming of the ship's systems. Everyone stared at the view screen, trying to process what they had just witnessed. Captain Hyun-soo's voice cut through, the static still calm and professional. "Obstacle cleared, Commander Taeho. Sorry for the light show. Our weapons tend to be a bit dramatic." A bit dramatic. The human had just erased an asteroid the size of a small moon from existence and called it dramatic. Yoon-ji was frantically checking her communication systems, thinking they must be malfunctioning. The casual tone in the human captain's voice couldn't be real. No one could be that calm after demonstrating such terrifying power. "Captain," Taeho managed to say, "what kind of weapons were those?" "Standard kinetic artillery," Hyun-soo replied. "Nothing fancy. We just accelerate dense metal slugs to very high velocities. Physics does the rest." Standard. The human called weapons that could vaporize asteroids standard. Science advisor So Young appeared on the screen beside Captain Hyun-soo. She looked excited, like a teacher explaining a simple concept to students. The projectiles were depleted uranium cores wrapped in tungsten, she explained cheerfully. We accelerate them using magnetic fields to about 15% of light speed. When they impact a target, the kinetic energy converts to heat and the target undergoes rapid phase transition. Bitna translated the technical language in her head and felt sick. Rapid phase transition. The human scientist was describing the complete atomization of matter in the same tone she might use to discuss the weather. The beauty of kinetic weapons. So, Young continued, is their simplicity. No exotic particles, no subspace distortions, no complex energy matrices, just mass, velocity, and basic physics. Wanbin stepped forward on the human bridge. Captain, should we run a diagnostic on the firing systems? We had a slight power fluctuation during the salvo. Good idea, Hyun-soo agreed. We don't want any malfunctions during important meetings. Malfunctions. They were worried about malfunctions in weapons that could destroy small moons. Jun-woo was running calculations in his head, and the numbers terrified him. If the humans could accelerate projectiles to 15% of light speed, their weapons had more destructive potential than anything the Council possessed. Commander, he whispered to Tae-ho, we need to reevaluate the human fleet immediately. Tae-ho nodded slowly, still staring at the glowing cloud where the asteroid used to exist. He was beginning to understand that everything they thought they knew about humanity was wrong. The crude, ugly ships floating around them weren't primitive vessels built by a young species learning to explore space. They were weapons platforms designed by a species that had turned warfare into a science. Bitna, he said quietly. Scan the human fleet again. All of it. Bitna's fingers flew over her controls. New data flooded her screens, and what she saw made her feel cold all over. Sir, every human ship is armed, heavily armed. Those aren't exploration vessels or diplomatic ships. They're warships. All of them. The beautiful council fleet suddenly seemed fragile and helpless. Their elegant crystal hulls and artistic curves would offer no protection against weapons that could vaporize asteroids. How many of those kinetic projectiles could they fire? Tae-ho asked. Bitna checked her readings. Based on their power signatures, each ship could sustain continuous fire for approximately 4 hours. 4 hours of weapons that could destroy small moons. The math was simple and horrifying. The human fleet could reduce the entire council, formation to atomic vapor, in a matter of minutes. Captain Hyun-soo's voice came through the communication channel again. Is everything all right, Commander? You seem quiet. Tae-ho realized he had been staring at the view screen for several minutes. Without speaking, the human captain was still smiling, still acting friendly and professional. We're just impressed by your technology, Tae-ho said carefully. Thank you, Hyun-soo replied. We're pretty proud of our engineering, simple, reliable, and effective. Would you like to continue our negotiations? Continue negotiations, as if nothing had changed. As if they hadn't just demonstrated the ability to annihilate the most powerful fleet in council space. Tae-ho looked at his officers. Bitna was pale and shaking. Jun-woo looked like he had seen a ghost. Yoonji was staring at her communication console as if it might explode at any moment. They were no longer meeting with a primitive species hoping to join galactic civilization. They were facing a military force that could challenge the entire Galactic Council. And the humans were still smiling and talking about trade agreements. The silence stretched across both fleets like a physical thing. Commander Tae-ho sat in his command chair, staring at the expanding cloud of glowing gas that had once been a mountain-sized asteroid. His mind struggled to process what he had just witnessed. The humans had casually erased 8 kilometers of solid rock from existence in 3 seconds, and Captain Hyun-soo was acting like it was perfectly normal. Commander? Hyun-soo's voice came through the communication channel. Are you ready to continue our discussions? Tae-ho looked at his officers. Bitna was running diagnostic checks on her sensors, hoping they were malfunctioning. Jun-woo was calculating weapon ranges and firing solutions with the desperate focus of a man trying to find an escape route. Yoonji kept checking her communication systems as if she could somehow call for help, but there was no help to call. The Council's nearest military fleet was weeks away, and it wouldn't matter anyway. The human weapons could destroy anything the Council possessed. Yes, Tae-ho said finally. Let's continue. But everything had changed. The beautiful council ships that had seemed so impressive an hour ago now looked like delicate glass sculptures floating helplessly among predators. "Excellent," Hyun-Soo said with that same friendly smile. "Where were we?" "I believe we were discussing trade routes." Trade routes? The human captain wanted to talk about trade routes after demonstrating weapons that could level continents. Tae-ho tried to focus on the conversation, but his mind kept returning to the implications of what he had seen. Humanity wasn't a young species stumbling into space with primitive technology. They were a military power that had been watching and learning from the Council for decades. "Our merchant ships use standard Council navigation protocols," Tae-ho heard himself saying. "We could share those with your trading vessels." "That would be very helpful," Hyun-Soo replied. "Our own navigation systems are rather basic compared to yours." Basic. Tae-ho almost laughed. The humans had weapons that defied known physics, but they called their technology basic. First Officer Wonbin appeared on the screen beside his captain. "Commander Tae-ho, we're curious about your defensive systems. How do Council ships protect themselves during long voyages?" The question sent a chill down Tae-ho's spine. Why were the humans asking about Council defenses? "We use energy shields and point defense systems," he answered carefully. "Most dangers in space are natural phenomena like radiation or small debris." "Interesting," Wonbin said. "And these energy shields, how much kinetic impact can they absorb?" Junwoo grabbed Tae-ho's arm and whispered urgently, "Sir, they're gathering intelligence about our vulnerabilities." Tae-ho realized his tactical analyst was right. The humans weren't just making casual conversation. They were systematically learning about Council military capabilities. "Our shields are designed primarily for environmental protection," Tae-ho said truthfully. There was no point in lying. The humans could probably see through any deception anyway. "Of course," Hyun-Soo said. "Most civilized species don't need heavy military defenses. Space is generally a peaceful place." Generally peaceful. The words carried an odd weight, coming from someone who commanded weapons that could vaporize asteroids. Science advisor So Young joined the conversation. "Commander, we've been studying your ship's energy signatures. Your power systems are truly elegant. Much more sophisticated than our crude fusion reactors." Sophisticated. The human scientist called Council technology sophisticated, while casually describing weapons that used basic physics to achieve impossible destruction. "Thank you," Tae-ho said. "Our engineers spend decades perfecting each system." "Decades," So Young repeated thoughtfully. "That must make repairs very difficult. If a key component is damaged, how long does it take to replace?" Another intelligence-gathering question disguised as scientific curiosity. "Replacement components are custom-built," Tae-ho admitted. "Depending on the complexity, it could take months or years." He saw Wonbin and So Young exchange a meaningful glance on the human bridge. They were learning that Council ships, for all their beauty and sophistication, were fragile and difficult to repair. "Our approach is different," Hyun-Soo said. "We build everything from standard components. If something breaks, we just swap in a replacement part. Takes a few hours at most." A few hours. The humans could repair their warships in the time it took. Council artisans to polish a single panel. Bitna was listening to the conversation while monitoring her sensors. The energy readings from the human fleet remained steady and strong. 7 warships with enough firepower to destroy entire worlds, and they showed no signs of strain from their recent demonstration. "Sir," she whispered to Tae-ho, "I'm detecting communication signals between the human ships. They're coordinating something?" Tae-ho felt his blood turn cold. Were the humans planning an attack? Had this entire meeting been a trap? But Captain Hyun-Soo continued talking about trade agreements and cultural exchanges, his voice calm and friendly. If he was planning violence, he showed no sign of it. "We should probably exchange some basic technical manuals," Hyun-Soo suggested. "Nothing classified, just general engineering principles. It might help both our species understand each other better." Understanding. Tae-ho was beginning to understand more than he wanted to. Humanity had spent decades watching the Council from hiding, learning their strengths and weaknesses. They had developed technology specifically designed to counter everything the Council possessed. While Council species spent thousands of years perfecting art and philosophy, humans had perfected war. That sounds reasonable, Tejo said, though his voice sounded hollow to his own ears. The negotiations continued for another hour. The humans were polite, curious, and seemingly eager to establish peaceful relations. They offered raw materials, asked about council culture, and suggested joint scientific projects. But underneath every friendly word, Tejo sensed the presence of those terrible weapons. The humans didn't need to threaten anyone. The casual destruction of the asteroid had said everything that needed saying. When the meeting finally ended, Captain Hyun-soo smiled warmly. "This has been very productive, Commander. I look forward to future cooperation between our peoples." "As do I," Tejo replied, though he wasn't sure what cooperation meant when one side held such overwhelming advantages. After the communication ended, the bridge of the Cosmic Harmony fell silent. The crew sat at their stations, processing what they had learned. "Sir," Junwoo said finally, "what do we tell the Council?" Tejo considered the question. "How do you explain that a species you thought was primitive actually possesses weapons that could destroy the galactic government? How? Do you report that humanity's crude appearance masks the most advanced military technology anyone has ever seen?" "We tell them the truth," he said at last. "Humanity isn't asking to join our civilization. They're informing us that the balance of power in the galaxy has changed." He looked at the human ships floating calmly among the asteroids. 7 gray. Warships that could challenge the entire Galactic Council. "And we better hope they stay friendly," he added quietly. "Because when you finally meet a species that has weaponized physics itself, you don't try to contain them. You try very carefully, not to make them angry,